one world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is December 5th, 2012. It is the Wednesday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. And tonight, I am pleased to be joined for 2 hours by a fellow radio show host here on the network and a good friend of mine, Gwen Caldwell. Gwen, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Popeye. What an honor to be invited.
Well, it's actually an honor to have you on the broadcast, as I'm sure most of the listeners know by now. Gwen, even though she only does an hour-long broadcast per 5 days a week, that 1 hour, her guests are some of the most powerful guests on the network. Even, I mean, if you think I pull big guests, Gwen's got me and Joe Joseph both beat. If we put our efforts together and combined it, Gwen, you've got us beat with some of the guests that you bring on. And it's funny because you know everybody. It's not like you, some of the guests you might get through their agents or whoever, their manager, but a lot of these people you literally know on a first name basis. So when they talk to you, it's like, oh, hi, Gwen. How are you? You know, you're like, oh, hi, Chuck. Like when you're talking to Chuck Baldwin, you know what I mean? It's just amazing the people you know, Gwen. So good job on the broadcast.
Well, thanks. It's really been fun, and as I'm sure everyone knows, I've kind of gone through some changes on the network too. But I love doing radio. I miss doing shows with Joe, but I just love doing the morning show. I love it.
And it's nice to have someone in the morning that, you know, you talk about real issues and truth and things like that, but at the same time, you're not freaking out about it. You have this very calm demeanor whenever you'll be talking about some of the most horrific things. Even, okay, once in a while you get fired up. And once in a while, Gwen's had too much morning brew before morning brew. But it's good to get fired up. You know, normally you're very even keel though, and it's really hard sometimes to do that with especially the stuff that we talk about. And you in particular, you bring on some interesting guests, like the guy you had on today,
David Andrew Christensen.
Yeah, he's pretty interesting. I mean, you've had him on a few times. The
guy is totally anal retentive about research and documentation. And I don't know, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I lobby. I'm a family rights advocate. I've held and elected position, and what I've learned through the course of that is that you absolutely must have your ducks in a row. You must absolutely have your documentation, have it verified, and if you ever get angry or you elevate your voice, you have immediately lost 99% of your audience. And so there are some things that I've learned through this process, and David gets that, and I really have a lot of respect for him because he does do the research and he does have things documented.
Yeah, and his research is, some of the things he talks about is pretty incredible. What piqued my interest was the story about the murder of the Coast Guard officer, and I'm a former Coast Guardsman myself, and I hadn't, this guy had emailed me, but I have a ton of emails. Sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 days to get to my emails before I can see him. And before I'd actually gone through and noticed that he had emailed me, you had him on as a guest, and I heard your broadcast with him talking about the murder of this Coast Guard officer.
Oh, yeah, Commander Goatsy, yeah.
Yeah, and how it was connected to the BP oil spill, and I was like, whoa. So I went and checked his work out, and, the guy, talk about a ton of he goes into like the minutia of details, and this guy knows. It's amazing the amount of stuff he's got plugged into his noodle. So I've been watching some of his videos and stuff. I'm going to have him on as a guest soon eventually. You know how it is.
You'll love it. Yeah, he's a great guest, and he does know his stuff. He does. It's one of my what I like about radio, especially about live radio, and especially on Orion, I just can't say enough good things about Orion Talk Radio. I think there's such a great crew there, and Jimmy is awesome to work with. But it is what it is, and it's just there, and there's no phoniness about it. There's no cover up. There's no, oops, I shouldn't have said that. You just get to be who you are, and you get to put it out there just like it is in real life. It's not all this fluff and cover up, and I really, I really appreciate that we have that liberty at Orion to be able to do that and be able to express ourselves how we see fit on the network, and we get the support of our fellow our peers at the network.
Well, that's why I like your show, because you bring on you talk about things that nobody else actually. I haven't really heard anybody in the alternative media talk about some of the things you talk about. For instance, some of the, a few of the things we're going to get into tonight, like I asked you off air. I said, what should we call the native people that were here before we came and took the land hundreds of years ago? And they're called the Lakota right now. The remaining native people. I guess where is it, in the Midwest, right, Gwen?
Where I live, it's the Lakota. Actually, the treaties were signed with the Dakota Sioux Indians. That was the nation, Dakota Sioux Indians. But there are three bands, I guess you would say. No, not bands. There's Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota. And the only difference I know between them is who their families and extended families are. But the Lakota use the L, the Nakota use an N, and the Dakota use the N. So it's a language dialect difference that's most noticeable in different, but they're all part of the Dakota Sioux Indian Nation.
And you're Lakota, right?
I'm not. I am Cherokee and Lenape. But I've lived here for 15 years now among the Lakota people. And I was, of course, raised, it's kind of funny. I do these speaking engagements, and, I tell people I was raised in a bipolar family, and they kind of chuckle, but, my mom is just totally white, European, Christian kind of a thing. And then my dad was just totally the opposite, just really earth-based, really grounded, really not Christian. And, so I really at a very early age, I learned. I think I knew it at a very early age that what I was being told at the church was bullshit, and that what I resonated with was what my dad was teaching me and how he walked his talk, you know. And at a very early age, I saw the hypocrisy in the church. So I guess I always lent myself more toward that. And plus, geographically, I lived closer to my dad's relatives than I did my mom's. And so I wasn't so much exposed to the European side of my family. It was more weekends, summer vacations and that kind of thing, not on all the time deal.
Gwen, I'm going to cut us off because we got a break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. When we get back, we're going to get into a few things such as the Lakota, what they're going through, other native people, and more. So stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm hanging out with Gwen Caldwell. And if you don't know who Gwen is, you need to check her radio show out. She's on from noon to 1 every day, Monday to Friday, Eastern Standard, here on Orion Talk Radio. The name of the show is called Morning Brew, and I urge you to check it out because if many of the guests you've heard on my broadcast, she's had on to interview, but she also has a ton more. And you'd be like, as I said in the first segment, you'd be surprised who Gwen gets on. She knows a lot of people. She reaches out to a lot of these people, so she does a really good broadcast. Check her out. All right, getting back into it, Gwen, we were talking about what the Lakota people are going through, as well as pretty much every other native, anybody else who is a native person. And I guess that's the only right way to say it as a whole, to include everybody in the country, because they're not Indians and they're not native, quote unquote, Americans. So I just say the native people because they were here before the settlers came here, and there was some horrific things done to them.
Before we discovered Columbus, yes.
Yeah, right. Before you discovered Columbus, a lot of people don't realize that Columbus didn't stumble upon the United States like they think, or America, whatever you want to call it.
I know, it's just such a God.
They knew it was here, Gwen. He came over here because they knew it was here from earlier maps and stuff that these royal families had due to the fact that when the Templars fled Europe, some of them, they found stuff up in, I don't know if you know this, up in New England with Templar inscriptions that predate when Columbus was supposed to have landed here. So obviously Columbus didn't find America. He already knew it was here.
I think the thing that really bothers me about the whole Columbus story is I remember from a very early age being told the lie about Columbus and the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and all the happy little horseshit that they lie to you about in public education, But I noticed that the Pilgrims were always dressed in really warm clothes, and the original people of this continent, even though it was, at the end of the harvest, it was cold, and these poor saps came over here and they didn't prep, and so they were hungry, and so the good people of the continent fed them, but they were in loincloths and looked really vicious and carried around tomahawks in this peaceful, happy little holiday that they were having, and it just, stuff like that ad nauseum in the education system, it's just, it's such a disservice, and it really, I think it continues to breed hatred. It continues to allow the genocide to be perpetuated against the people, and it pisses me off to no end.
If people, and nowadays especially, like Charlotte Iserby's talked about the dumbing down of America. Now, especially, people don't have any idea. But even when I was a kid, it was cowboys and Indians, and it was always the cowboys were the good guys, and the Indians were always bad, and the Indians scalp people. Well, I don't know if people know this, but the Indians didn't teach anybody scalping. They learned that from the British. They learned that from the white people that came on. I don't want to get it, bring it down to that level, because that's a distraction too, where it's white people versus this person. But the original white people that came over here and found the natives, the British, when they came over here, who do you think taught them scalping? It certainly wasn't the Indians teaching them. It was the other way around. So who really were the savages?
The hair is really significant, and thus the scalping. Why it was just repulsive to the Indian people, but even
let's get into detail a little bit. Why is it? I mean, I understand, but probably the average listener doesn't. You know, the male Indians and females too, but males too, they grow their hair long. Now, I know it's not only a thing with part of, I guess, being a native, but the males. And I think if I used the word Indian, I might have. If I did, I may slap myself for it. But the males would grow their hair long, not only as a part of the culture, but it was also. Don't you guys believe that the hair is kind of like an antenna for energy and other things, and it's part of the body for a reason, and letting it grow long, it has a lot to do with spirituality and everything else. I mean, and there's a really strong belief in it, right? And that's one of the reasons why they would take the scalp and the hair from the natives, whoever they fought when the British would fight them?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, they did a study. They sent some native warriors to Vietnam. And because they watched them and they handpicked them and they took them there, but they cut their hair and sent them through boot camp. And when they got over there, they couldn't function the same way that they did at home with their long hair. So they sent another group over there, and they let them keep their hair long. Because, yes, it does. It serves as an antenna of sorts. It's like this intuitive part of you that, you know. So anyway, but not only that, you know, to take somebody's scalp and send them. To have an Indian scalped and send them that way to the spirit world would just, not. I might be able to see the Pawnee doing that, but not even really doing that to one another. But that was something that was brought from Europe. That was not the way that the people behaved.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the British too. It was the
French.
The French did it too. So I mean, it wasn't just. I shouldn't just say the British. It was more of a European thing as a whole. But it was not the native people did not. You know what I mean? They didn't run around teaching the British the Europeans that came over here how to scalp. It was the other way around. That the barbaric practice was actually first done to them. So if they ever picked it up and did it to any of the French or British or I don't want to call them Americans. I guess even after the Revolutionary War, if it happened to any quote unquote Americans or whoever, it didn't come from history as you're taught as these savages attacked and would scalp. That's not really how it went down at all. In fact, if anybody, the people from Europe that came over here, the French, the British, they were the savages. The things that they did to the native people that were here, to the women, to the children, unarmed, not fighters, women and children, and the things that they did were deplorable, horrific, and despicable.
Yes. It was kind of interesting. The Lakota would take women in battle or in raids, but then once they were done arguing or whatever, they would allow the women to leave, the children to leave, and they refused to leave because the hospitality was such that they didn't want to leave and go back where they came from. And we'll get into that because there are some things about the Lakotas that are so incredible that I've never experienced or witnessed anywhere else that I've ever been, and it really is remarkable. And the way that their government system was set up, the way that they raised their children, what was culturally considered appropriate and inappropriate, all of those things still exist today. Some more prevalent than others, but I'd like to get into that when we come back from the break, Popeye.
Yeah, we can hop right into that when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. 2 full hours tonight with Gwen Caldwell. And as you've heard, she's also got a broadcast here on the network. Check it out. Noon to 1, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Jimmy added some of my new bumper music. And for those of you that are probably going to ask me, yes, that was a little bit of dubstep. That was Skrillex. Some of it I like. And coming back in from break, I like to have something that's got a little bit of, oomph to it. Separates the commercials from, the broadcast. And it's, going out, it's nice to have something mellow or something a little instrumental so you can speak over it. But coming back in, I like something that's got a little bit of, shock value, a little bit of slap you in the face. So if you don't know who Skrillex is, go check him out. He's this little nerdy-looking dude, but he how do they say it? He drops the bass, whatever. Listen to me, I sound like an old... I don't want to... dubstep's kind of new. I don't want to sound to the younger viewer or listeners that I'm a retard or anything. I feel like an old man. Listen to me. How do they say it? God, how do you know you're old, Gwen?
I know.
When the music that you grew up listening to, that you remember when was brand new, was on the oldie station. Then
right.
That's how I know. That's how it makes me feel old. Anyway, getting back into it because I don't want to waste too much time. We were talking about the plight or the things that the native people, the Lakota, the Cherokee, anybody, I'm sure the Seminoles go through. In fact, I've seen it down here. A lot of people, they think, these natives, or as we'll say, dumbed down Americans will say, these Indians, they got it easy. They get a check from the government, they get money or whatever. Well, I mean, it's not like we.
It's always hilarious to me because they think all of us get this big fat casino check or something. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? Okay, I just want to talk specifically about Pine Ridge Reservation. Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota is one of the poorest counties in the nation. In fact, I think South Dakota has 2 or 3 counties that are in the top 5 poorest counties in the nation. They all are Indian reservations on those counties. And they are prison of war camps. They have a prison of war camp number. And they are primarily, because of the treaties, not that they observed any of them, but there's IHS Healthcare, which is Indian Health Services, which is provided by the Department of Navy. Those employees are paid by the Department of Navy, and it's some of the worst health care you would ever get in your life. Then you have housing, which is HUD. Most of the housing is provided. Almost everyone gets either food stamps or commodities. And so basically it's just this little socialist microcosm on the reservations. And there's not a lot of industry. Pine Ridge Indian Reservation has, depending on what statistics you look at, anywhere from an 80 to 89% unemployment rate. The median income of the population there is $5,000 a year. They have a very high rate of drug and alcohol abuse. There is a suicide rate, primarily among young people, 300 times higher than our stateside counterparts. So it's a lot of the people don't have running water. They don't have heat. Many people live in nothing more than literally shacks. They've got plastic over the windows. I know people who literally live in their cars, and they park their car at a relative's house where they can go in and get something to eat and shower or whatever, but basically they sleep in their car, that kind of thing. On Pine Ridge Reservation several years ago, there were 4,000 heads of household that did not have their own place to live. many times you have 3, 4, 5 families living in one 3-bedroom home. And each family will have its own bedroom or split up the living room and the dining room or whatever. And so you can have anywhere from, 15 to 20 or more people in one household, because there is no housing, there are no jobs. It really is pitiful from that perspective. But on my first trip to Pine Ridge, it was a business trip. I was meeting with John Trudell about a benefit concert that we were working on. And I drove in a hellacious blizzard. And I went to Wounded Knee. And but before I went to Wounded Knee, we got snowed in Martin, South Dakota. And there were AIM people from all over that were there. And there were people sleeping. All the motels had been rented. We had a van, but the wind was blowing so hard we couldn't keep the pilot light lit on the furnace. And so it was too cold to sleep in the van, so they set up beds in the fire hall, and they brought mattresses from the jail for us to sleep on. But this woman, Mary Crow Dog, she came up to me at this little, it was like a little, I don't know, like a stop and go, whatever. And she just walked right up to me. I had no idea who this woman was. And she said right to me, she said, you need to take care. She said, the spirits at Wounded Knee, they're strong. And I just went, whoa. And so I asked somebody, I said, who is that woman? That's Mary Crow Dog. And I went, oh, okay. So anyway, we ended up getting to Wounded Knee, and I literally physically could not walk from where we parked up to the graveyard. I can't even begin to tell you what kind of an experience that was for the first time, to go to that mass grave of 300 plus elders, women, and children massacred by the 7th Cavalry. It was really something. But I noticed some things right away. I got to Little Wound School in Kyle, and there was a woman, Rosalie Little Thunder. She was talking about the buffalo herds at Yellowstone, and there were a lot of people in this room, and we came in and we sat down, and there were all these big old Vietnam veterans, AIM boys, and these grandmas came in. And I'm telling you what, those big old boys were tripping over themselves to get up out of a chair for those grandmas to sit down. I had never seen anything like it in the non-Indian community. I'd never seen anything like it. And so that was the beginning for me. As far as my journey to South Dakota, that was in February of 98. And then later that year, I moved. Have you been back to Wounded Knee since? Oh, yeah, I go often. And is the energy there the same way every time you go? Like you can, I would imagine that it's got to be intense. And I know you're in touch with that side of your soul and the universe. I know you're more intuitive than the average person, so I know you would be able to understand when you go there. You could literally feel it, right? Like in your bones. Oh, one time I went there, my friend was here from Austria and another friend from Germany, so I took them there, and I got out of the car barefoot. It was hot, and I didn't have my shoes on in the car, and it's kind of sandy there, and so I got out of the car, and I took about 3 steps, and it was like somebody just hit me from the back of my legs. It's powerful. It really is. I can't even begin to describe it, but the whole journey, there was something about the whole journey. And, 2 hours isn't enough to go into it, but...
You know what, I'm going to cut us off because we got a break sneaking up on us. But that is some powerful stuff, Gwen.
Feel it coming in the air.
Yeah.
The sonic symbols everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm addicted to the truth.
I'm ready.
It's a dangerous love
I'm
affair.
exquisite.
Can't be scared when
I'm
it goes
reversing.
down. Stand for
Flip the
freedom
script.
here and now.
Undo the spell.
Only thing that's on my mind is who's gonna free this town
Bring it.
tonight. Who's gonna free this town tonight?
What's up?
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Give a shout out to my friends, Chris and Cherie Geo, who they were just on Monday. That's one of their songs. Illuminati Run This Town, if I remember correctly, is the title. Chris released that a couple years ago. You can go to truthfrequency.com. I think he's actually got the whole album and all that stuff up there to download for free. Go check it out. But big shout out to Chris and Cherie. Thank you for letting me use some of your music as one of my bumpers. All right, getting back into it. Gwen, we were going over some pretty powerful stuff, and I wanted to, I want because this dovetails in with who I'm going to bring up, and before I forgot, I wanted to talk about this with you. There's a certain someone who recently passed away, and a lot of people, when he passed away, some of the whatever alternative media, they went on air and they played clips of interviews and stuff, which was cool. They did their own tributes to him, which was cool. But I felt I didn't want to even mention it until I actually had you on, because I had planned on having you on, a while ago when I chatted with you, and then all this stuff happened, whatever. So I didn't want to talk about it until I had you on, because you actually knew the man. And for the listeners who don't know, I'm talking about Russell Means. And if you don't know who Russell is, I urge you. Gwen and I couldn't fit into a 4-hour broadcast everything about Russell. No, he was not a perfect human being. None of us are. But he was a good man. He stood up for what he believed in. And I got to say, the guy had a set of balls that wouldn't fit in a dump truck. So we recently lost him. And there was a lot of people that were saddened by his passing. Russell was a true warrior. And Gwen, you actually knew him. And I didn't want to bring up his passing or anything without actually having you on, because you knew him, and I couldn't do it justice. I'd rather have you explain a little bit about who Russell was and why people should look him up and check him out, because you actually knew him better than me. So why should people get to know who Russell Means was?
Well, Russell Means, I just want to back up and talk a little bit about how I know Russell Means.
Go ahead.
He's prevalent in the community here, but he doesn't spend all of his time here. He's away on sets doing movies. His wife, of course, is Danae, and her home was in New Mexico, and so they spent time down there and time up here. But I worked on several projects with Russell, and there were 2 men that were murdered at White Clay, Nebraska, which is within the 5-mile buffer zone of the Pine Ridge Reservation. Pine Ridge is a dry reservation. Alcohol's illegal there. But White Clay sells $4 million worth of beer. It has a population of 9 people, and it sells $9 million worth of beer out of there every year, mostly to people on the reservation. Well, 2 men were found in a ditch, dead, at White Clay. And that started...
This is a dumb question, but were they white people, natives?
No, 2 Indian men from Pine Ridge.
Oh, okay. So 2 people from the reservation were found dead. Okay, go on.
And the eyewitness, who was discredited because they said she wasn't a credible witness, said that she saw a police officer do it. At least ways dumped the bodies. So there was a march. And at that time, I was 7 months pregnant. It was 112 degrees. And there were thousands of people from all over the place. And we walked from Pine Ridge to White Clay. And people are asking me, why in the hell are you out here walking in this heat, big and pregnant as you are? And my response to that was, if the numbers count now, I'm going to stand up and be counted, because I don't ever want that to be one of my children or one of my grandchildren laying in that ditch. So if the numbers count, now's the time to be counted, not later. And so every year I went on that march, but Russell Means was on that march. And that was the first time that I actually shook the man's hand, didn't really talk to him. He always seemed a bit arrogant to me in contrast to how humble and quiet the Lakota people are just in general, you know. And I always thought he was kind of full of himself a little bit. And then after that, I was running for state senate, and in my district was the South Unit of the Badlands. And I was working on a 3-day event, and as soon as I got done with that, I went out to the stronghold, as part of the occupation there on the stronghold. And we were out there for about 3 weeks and, doing perimeter security checks. And this is on tribal land, mind you. This is tribal land, the South Unit of the Badlands. There was a memorandum of agreement that Dickie Wilson signed years before that had never been complied with by the National Park Service or anyone else. And so they were out in the Badlands desecrating teepee rings, trying to take fossils out of there. And the people just went, oh, hell no. No. And so we went out and we occupied the stronghold. So I'm on perimeter security one day, and I'm right on the edge of the Badlands, and it just drops down, just straight down, like the Grand Canyon down. And all of a sudden there's this helicopter. I didn't even hear it. And it's just like right in my face. And, there were, all these things that they would do. They would fly over in these planes and try and intimidate us, and that kind of thing. When the guys were out there, Rural Water refused to bring water and fill up the tanks. And I called up and I said, there are women and children out here. It's your treaty obligation to get us water. And if we don't have it in 24 hours, I'm going to call a press conference. And by God, we had water out there in those tanks. But so anyway, after 3 weeks of me being out there, then finally the National Park Service brass from Omaha and DC, they decided to come out and meet with us. And Russell Means was there. And, my daughter, she had been at her dad's for vacation. And so she hadn't been out on the stronghold. So we're at this meeting and Russell's there. And there were a lot of people there. But he really stuck out. And finally she goes, Mom, who is that guy that's walking around like a peacock? And I said, oh, that's Russell Means. But, and I couldn't help but laugh because, there was something about Russell that he just had that. And it wasn't really arrogance once you got to know him. It was just this, he knew who he was and he knew what he was doing kind of a thing. But it was in such contrast to everybody else, But when he stood up and addressed those people that day, it changed the whole ball game for me where Russell Means was concerned. Because he stood up and he said, we have a treaty, and this is treaty land. And now you're here by invitation. Prior to this invitation, you weren't welcome here. And he said, you forget yourselves. We have a constitution that you all took an oath to. And we have Article 6 that says treaties are the law of the land. And now we are demanding that you acknowledge that and that you get off our land and leave us alone to do what we see fit with our land, which is not digging up the dead and hauling it out of here and desecrating our teepee rings and our sacred sites. And I just went, whoa. And so he was very outspoken, and he was very intelligent and very well educated, and he was a spokesman for the people. And I know that we're coming up on a break, but I'd like to talk more about some things that Russell did and projects that I worked with Russell on when we come back after the break.
Yeah, no doubt. We can, I'm letting you lead the way, Gwen. I'm letting you lead the way. We can talk about whatever you like. In fact, I was hoping to get into Russell more anyway because, a lot of people don't know. You could read about what he did on a website, maybe read a story, but it's better to hear it from you because it's firsthand experience. Literally, you were there. You know what I mean, for a lot of the stuff. You got to witness it on a different level than most people. So you were actually a part of history rather than reading about it. So what better perspective to get than yours? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 1 just flew right by. Hour number 2 coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes with my guest tonight, Gwen Caldwell. Check her show out. 5 days a week, 12 to 1 EST. Morning Brew. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Tonight, I am joined by my good friend, fellow radio show host, activist, and all-around charming lady, Gwen Caldwell. And Gwen hosts a radio broadcast here on the Orion Talk Radio Network 5 days a week called Morning Brew from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 days a week. Check it out. As I said the first hour, Gwen never fails to impress with the list of guests that she brings on and the topics of discussion. And Gwen, you're not really afraid to cover anything. I mean, you'll talk about 9/11, you'll talk about education, the BP oil spill, the stuff we're talking about tonight. I really do. I myself do listen to your broadcast. I try to catch it. There are days, obviously, if I'm stuck doing something and I can't tune in because I'm dealing with something or whatever, but I do listen at least, I'd say 2 to 3 times a week, and then sometimes I'll even just pull the archives because it's easier later on, but I do like your broadcast. I think you do a great job. So bravo Zulu to you, my dear.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. I really like radio, and I'm just so happy that Jimmy found me a morning spot. Yay.
I like your morning show. It's got, like I said, you talk about some stuff, the same horrific things we do, but it's very, you do it in a very mellow way, and you have that pretty awesome jazz music that you have as bumpers coming in and out. So it's kind of a mellow feel. Like you can sit back, especially for people that are working. If there's people that are, I know for you it's earlier in the morning where you are, but if there's people that are working like on the East Coast, it's noon, they can sit back and kind of chill out and listen to you while doing work. It's not something that's heavy. You're not. It's a good broadcast all around. So good job. Thank you. I really do try and get a variety of guests, but I always try to, in as much as possible, talk about what the solutions are. Everybody, all you have to do is turn on the boob tube or a radio or go to Facebook or YouTube, and you can see what a freaking mess that we're in, So I kind of like to come from a solutions-based perspective, and I like to talk about, okay, if somebody wants to come on and they want to say this is a problem, then my question is, okay, then how do we fix it? How can we support you in fixing this? And I think that's important
to bring that kind of balance to radio, especially alternative radio.
I agree, because a lot of the time you hear, and I don't want to say all the time because there are hosts out there, myself included, who do try to bring solutions, but there a lot of times, even myself, I find myself talking a lot about negative stuff. That's why a lot of times I try to throw positive things in there too. You know what I mean? Because I think if you just put out doom and gloom constantly, at the end of the day, you're just feeding into the same system, or the same type of system that you're supposed to be against. That's putting out fear and everything else. And I don't want to be part of that. I'd rather not put that out. I'd rather be the antithesis of that.
I always want to know what's it going to look like coming out the other side, whatever the other side is.
Right.
What's it going to look like then? And I really am a person, and I think maybe it's because of my where I live and who I am, and the culture that I come from, that we have a real different perspective on a lot of things. And one of those things is children and women. We're taught growing up that women are sacred, children are sacred, and there's a whole different level. You'll see bumper stickers on the reservation. Domestic violence is not the Lakota way, and things like that. And if you get in trouble, like on the reservation, the strictest thing that you can do there is to do something to a child. If they get a call and to a house and there's alcohol involved and there are children in that home, you go to court for child abuse. And if you're convicted, you get a minimum sentence of 2 years per child. They don't mess around with it. And you even slap your old lady or whatever, and she calls law enforcement, tribal police will take you right down to jail, and the next thing you'll be doing is Tuesday nights down at the anger management and how to treat women right sessions with all the other stupid men on the reservation. They just don't tolerate it. It's not tolerated.
Let me ask you this. I know that there's a lot of bad things that go on, and over the course of time, I would say that that's been done on purpose, or that the culture has been steered that way by certain individuals. And it's the same way with other, if you wanted to break it down into I guess subcultures of humanity, where, and you broke it down by, well, say color, because let's be honest, that's the way some of the people in power think, right? For instance, the CIA steered the black community, especially during the 80s when rap started to come out. And Tupac used to, and for people that don't know, Tupac used to rap about how Jay-Z and other rappers were controlled by certain people, and they were, for lack of a better term, Illuminati, right? Well, now it's almost like pop culture in the hip-hop industry for you to hear somebody calling Jay-Z, someone in the Illuminati. If you go on YouTube, you see it all over the place. Back in the day, you didn't. He was up and coming. And the things Tupac talked about were different than what they were trying to push. And he's the only one that ends up getting shot. I don't want to get too much off on a tangent. The point is, all these different culture in society and different subcultures or whatever, many of them are manipulated and controlled to keep certain groups of individuals, however it's broken up, let's say, in a controlled stasis. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the reason they would want to keep the native people down is because out of anybody, I would say I even have a little bit of, as I told you, one of my great grandmothers was Cherokee, but I would say that anybody that's native and actually lives that culture, like somebody that, like, you live on the reservation, you're exposed to it. You actually, whether or not you partake in every little cultural event, you still have more exposure to that culture than like I do. You know what I mean? And I think that the native people were more connected with the universe and with things that were going on. And that's actually going to segue into something else I want to ask you tonight is, do you guys ever discuss 2012, and not as an end of the world thing, but as like an end of the ages thing, or what you guys believe? Because I never get a chance to actually ask and have a conversation with anybody that's Lakota or of Native, or in your case Cherokee, or any Native, any Native person. I never get a chance to ask them their take on 2012. So I do want to get into that, but I know there's a few other things that you wanted to talk about, Russell, too. We're coming up to a break in about a minute. What's your take? Do you think that, in like 30 seconds or less, do you think that, certain subcultures are controlled by certain individuals in power, on purpose to keep certain people or certain subcultures of people in control? There has been a United States agenda to commit genocide against the indigenous people on Turtle Island from the day they freaking landed here, and it hasn't stopped. And they have manipulated it in unbelievable ways, and it continues to this day. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know the difference between the United States and the United States of America, there's two different things. The United States is the corporation, the evil part of the evil entity that actually is in control of things. There's a reason you see U.S. Army, U.S. Marines. You don't see United States of America Army or United States of America Marines. Check it out. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And Gwen, there was a few other things that a couple other stories that you had wanted to bring up, or little anecdotes about Russell Means before we got onto other things. And I wanted to bring that back up because I didn't want to get. I know there's a bazillion things that I want to pick your brain on, and I know we'll end up getting sidetracked. So I'll give you the floor. The floor is yours. Well, the reason I talked about how women and children are considered sacred is because I'm a family rights advocate, and I primarily focus on the violations of the Indian Child Welfare Act. And I'm a third-generation product of Carlisle boarding school. My grandmother, man, these planes are going out of this base like crazy right now. It's crazy. My house is just rumbling. Anyway, they're probably headed to Syria or Iran, somewhere to raise hell. Oh, anyway, the boarding school era was part of that genocide. It was, they were going to kill the Indian and save the child. Kill an Indian, save the child. That was their mentality. They said it. They cut the hair. They beat them for speaking their language. Humiliated them, and so in the culture. There was an extended family unit that all lived together, and they had a headsman, they had a fire keeper, a medicine man, a whip keeper, a Tokala Society, which would be equivalent to like what National Guard does. Basically, they take care of the nation. And the Akichita, which were, they're the veterans. And so there's this whole structure, totally matriarchal too, I might add. But anyway, when the Catholics came and started hauling kids off to boarding school and beating them, they were no longer in that family structure. They didn't have parenting role modeled. They didn't have relationships role modeled. They didn't have a conflict resolution role modeled. Nothing like that. And so then they come back with all of this shame because they've been told that they're nothing. They're, and then they come back to the culture, and they don't know how to function. They don't know how to be a part of it anymore. So they drink and they do drugs. And then you've got a cycle of alcoholism that leads to more abuse. And so now, instead of the boarding schools committing that genocide of the family, you have the Department of Social Services taking children. So I was working on
this whole thing with the state. And so I called Russell and I said, Russell, I think I need to have community meetings and let people know what's going on, and that they don't have to talk to these social workers, and let them know what the law is so that they can protect themselves. And Russell said a really interesting thing to me that day, and I will never forget it. He said, Wopila, Gwen, for standing up and doing this. He said, the women are going to have to do battle on this one. He said, the women are going to have to stand up. This is going to have to be their fight. He said, but I want you to do this. And he said, and the men will be standing behind you. I said, well, stay then. And so I scheduled a meeting in Kyle. And I went in and set up, we made coffee and I brought cookies and stuff. And I had sent out press releases to all the media and everything. And there were quite a few people there. And Russell, he was standing over the cookie jar with my oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. He liked them a lot. So anyway, I got up to speak once the meeting started, and it was so striking to me because the women and children were sitting in chairs, a couple of people from different newspapers, Indian newspapers, none of the non-Indian newspapers or media came. But around the whole wall behind those people, all the men stood. Literally. And it wasn't, so when he said, we'll stand behind you, it wasn't just a figure of speech. They literally stood behind the women and the children. And I can't tell you how proud I was that day to be part of that community. And I had the privilege of walking and working with the warriors that are now gone and going. I had the honor of sitting with the chiefs and being taught the old ways and what the language means, and taught about the role and what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. And it really has been an amazing journey for me here. For the first time, I felt like I was at home, not only in the landscape, but in myself. There was this content, there was this knowing, just this being present in the day without expectation, without all this rushing around and being somebody that you weren't really, it was just an amazing, amazing thing. And so I've really, it's a novel that I could write about my experiences on Pine Ridge. But the thing that really stands out to me are the roles and the cultural roles that, I never see the men disciplining the children or correcting them. That's always the women. The women always do that. My mom used to always say, when your dad gets home, I'm telling on you, kind of a thing. But in Indian country, if the kids are acting up, they'll call the woman to come and correct the children. It's not their place. The women, if you're in a relationship, it's totally inappropriate to talk to your father-in-law, to your brother-in-laws, or other men in the community. Same with the women or the men. They don't talk to, their wives' sisters or other women in the community or their mother-in-laws. There's just this real strict protocol like that. The dress is very modest. The ceremonies are the same that they were a long time ago. We still have the Yanipi ceremonies and the Sundance ceremonies and all of that kind of thing. And all of those all of those things are mostly now open to non-Indian people. If you come in a good way and you're humble and you want to learn, you're welcome and treated well among the people. The hospitality of the Lakota people is impressive beyond belief. They will give you the best of everything that they've got. You go to a home, you're fed, they have to drink. You go away with a gift.
I'm going to cut us off, Gwen, because we have the break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Bottom of the hour, we still have another half hour with my good friend and fellow radio show host, Gwen Caldwell. As I've said 100 times already, go check out her broadcast, Morning Brew, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday to Friday. Check it out. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Gwen, last segment you were discussing, you guys, the Lakota still do, I hate saying you guys, it's like you people. I know. You know what I mean? It's just...
yeah,
you know what I mean. You still practice certain rituals and stuff and certain ceremonies, I guess you could say. What are your thoughts on 2012? Like, I'm sure that even before this year it had come up, but obviously I'm sure you guys aren't freaking out and thinking it's the physical end of the world. What were the native beliefs before we came here? Like, in fact, the Hopis. I know that the Hopi had some interesting, we'll say, I don't want to say myths, but stories. Their creation story was interesting. They had different stories about the end of the world and everything else. What were we'll say 200-300 years ago, maybe even a little further, what were the native stories about 2012? Did they even talk about it? Were the Mayans the only one? Did any of the native people here discuss 2012? What are your beliefs on it?
Well, first, I just want to say I can address that on some level, but the Cherokee and the Lakota people, I know for sure, they believe that they came from the Star people. That's our oral history. So, as in, just to clear that up, so people aren't sure, because I know what you're talking about, as in aliens, for lack of a better term, people in spaceships coming from somewhere else down to Earth, kind of like the Sumerians, like with the Anunnaki and stuff. Just to show you how everything kind of dovetails. Go on, Gwen. I didn't mean Pleiades. Pleiades. Okay, so anyway, so that there is nothing, not even in the language that I'm aware of, that has something in the language to describe that event. And I'll give you a, for instance, the word for earth is maka. That ma means all that is, and ka means everything that has ever been. So you never see Lakota spitting on the ground because one of their ancestors could have fallen there. They're directly related to that earth by the language. There is no word in the Lakota language like, oh, I love that. That kind of expression of love. There's not that kind of expression in the verbiage of the language, and I attribute that to the fact that they lived connected and interconnected with everything, and it was love was a natural state of being at the time that the language evolved. So there wasn't it didn't need something to be described outside of itself.
Yeah, there wasn't a necessity to actually describe what love was, or that you had that feeling aimed at something, because it was just naturally emanated 24/7 all over, everywhere, towards everything and everyone.
Right. There's no word in the Lakota language for goodbye either. The closest thing in the Lakota language to goodbye is doksha ke, which means until we meet again later, whether that be in this world an hour from now or in another lifetime. So there's not that same mentality of discontinuity. Nothing is linear. Everything is circular. So it's just a cycle. Everything's just considered another cycle, part of that hoop, that sacred hoop. And I know my son's grandfather, he was a holy man, and he used to go to these prophecy meetings, and there were holy men and medicine men from all different cultures and parts of the world that would come to these prophecy meetings. And Don Alejandro was one of those people that came. He's from Guatemala, and he is a 13th generation keeper of their oral history. And he said things at one of the prophecy meetings like, he said, Earth Mother is sick and she's going to start spewing vomit from her bowels. And there's something coming, and it's going to leave so many dead that they're going to be stacked mountain high, and there won't be enough living left to bury them. But he doesn't say the earth is going to end. But then after that, he talked about it being a shift of ages, and he said, in this time, you will know who you are and who you have always been and where you come from, and you will know it in the twinkling of an eye, that because of this shift in consciousness. And so that's my belief. I can't speak for the Lakota in general or any other group of people, but that's my journey. That's what I believe. I do believe that we live in some very, very interesting times right now. And I think we are going to see earth changes. I believe that we are going to experience ourselves in ways that we've never had to, because we live such a cushy, complacent little life that we're going to probably be pushed to every extreme that we could possibly know. But I don't believe that the world is going to end. I don't believe that.
Yeah, neither do I. And I've been saying the same thing. The Mayans themselves didn't believe that the world was going to end. It was an end of ages, not the end of the world. And we're going into what they call now, we're in the fourth sun, and we're going into the time of the fifth sun. Now, I can't go really into that and with any kind of educated, explanation of that, but that's how it's described. It's a shifting of the ages. It's a shifting of a time on Earth, and there have been 4 of those times. We're living in the 4th one. Obviously, humanity has survived that, and now we're going into the time of the 5th sun. You see, I think it's going to be a complete shift in the consciousness of man, like humanity. Like, as you were saying, the one elder was talking about how you're going to know who you are and, why you're here and where you're supposed to be and where you come from, all within the blink of an eye. That sounds just like some of the things I've heard about, where when people talk about the shift in consciousness, that in your mind you'll be everywhere and see everything at the same time and understand everything and be connected with everyone at the same time. It kind of sounds similar. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but from what research I've done, what I believe is there is a shift in consciousness coming, and that doesn't mean that December 22nd, everybody's going to wake up and people are going to be like, peace on earth and goodwill towards men and hugs and kisses and things. I don't think it's going to be like that dramatic. But I think that's going to be you've seen this kind of slow building, like ramping up. And I think that after the 21st is when it's going to start to really pick up pace, that this awakening. I mean, Brzezinski's talked about it twice in the past 3 years, how humanity as a whole around the world is awakening politically and even more so spiritually, but they don't want to address that because then that would be admitting other things. But it's hinted at in there. And spiritually and quote-unquote politically, mankind is awakening and understanding. When he says politically, he's talking about they're understanding the true nature of freedom. Okay, and they're starting to look beyond that. And that's what I think that the whole 2012 thing, a lot of it with the end of the world and all this stuff coincides with their physical manifestation of their fear, the police state, being put out because they fear this shift in consciousness, because then it'll make them in their
it's end game for them.
Yeah, it makes them irrelevant. I mean, they're done. It's like check and mate, done that fast, and they can't have that. And then it spoils their game that they've been playing for thousands and thousands of years. Ladies and gentlemen, final break coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. More with Gwen Caldwell. You got like 10 more minutes, so don't go anywhere. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of tonight's episode. Gwen, before we get into anything else, plug your website really quick where people can, because I know you have a chat page if people want to go to your site. You have like a listen live and chat page right there. What's the web address?
Oh, sure. It's www.morningbrew.webs.com. Yeah.
And you have your archives and stuff up there? Because I know Orion also has an archive page with all of Gwen's archive broadcasts from 5 days a week on there that you can download and listen to. But I wasn't sure if you had your own little archive section.
Well, no, I don't. I used to do that, but no, I just I have an archives page, but I just refer it back to Orion.
Gotcha. So just go to, if you want to listen to any of Gwen's older broadcasts, which I urge you to do, just go to the Orion Talk Radio archive page. It's oriontalkradio.com. There's right up in the header there, you'll see a bunch of different headings. Look up the one that says archives, click on it. You'll see all the work Timmy's been doing, because Timmy's been working his ass off behind the scenes. Thanks, Tim.
Yay, Timmy!
And he built this awesome archive section where you can not only listen with our own Orion player, which will be tweaked again soon. There's a new version of that coming out soon. But you can listen to it with the player there, or you can just download and save the file yourself. So all of Gwen's archives are there. Gwen, I know there's a few things you wanted to cover the last few minutes here in the last segment, so the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the water. The Lakota word for water, when we talk about water, mani wachoni. Wachoni being life-giving, mani being water. And so in that lack of separation, between us and the water, there is no separation. And so I want to talk a little bit about the water, and I want to talk a little bit about frequencies, because going into this time right now, we are all frequency. And I think, that's another part of the educational system that we've just been so blatantly lied to about. We are all energy. Everything is energy. Our words, our thoughts, our actions, our clothing. It is all related to a frequency. I don't care if it's a book, if it's music, but keeping that frequency elevated, and there are things that you can do in your life. Eat raw and healthy vegetables and fruits, nuts, living foods. Drink good filtered clean water, listen to wind chimes, go outside and stand barefooted on the ground, listen to the birds, really listen to them, listen to how they chatter. All of those things increase your vibrational rate. And when that vibrational rate goes up. Our bodies are 70 to 85% fluid. Our cells are, every cell we have is full of fluid. And so those things that we do, the things that we listen to, the things that we expose ourselves to, changes that frequency of the water in us. And Dr. Matsuo Emoto has done a ton of research on the water and how music and words and all of that changes the physical structure of water. They are trying to poison us with these damn chemtrails, fluoride in our water to crust our flippin' pineal glands up so that we don't have that ability to telecommunicate anymore. That is our connection to the Creator. So all of those things we have control over, and we need to quit giving up our power on the negative regurgitation of just bullshit news. It's all lies anyway. I don't know if we hear any news that isn't just pure propaganda anymore. But we have a choice. We have an alternative, and we get to choose what we do with the rest of our lives. We get to decide what the future looks like. We get to decide as generation keepers what we're leaving for the next 7 generations. We get to decide that. We don't have some blind asshat, some Oz somewhere getting to decide that for us. We get to do that. And we need to start doing it. We need to start being conscious of it. And you need to start letting go of your attachment to things and start being present in the day. Quit living with all this expectation. Quit taking things personally. Start really walking what we call the red road. Be mindful. Be mindful of the people around you. The last thing I want to say is we have families on the reservation that are very, very poor. And I've had calls about helping them with Christmas gifts. I do not like to collect money. But if there are people that are willing to send gifts that I can deliver to the families on the reservation, I am willing to receive those gifts. If you don't want to buy gifts and you insist on sending money, I will purchase the gifts and take them out there, or purchase food or whatever the family's needs are. I've got a list. But my mailing address is Gwenne Caldwell, Post Office Box 224, Black Hawk, South Dakota, 57718. Or you can contact me to get my address at morningbrew@hotmail.com, or click the contact button on my website, and I'll put this information in the chat room too, for people that listen in the archives if they want to go back and
really quick, Gwen. List off just some of the items that, in case anybody wants to send them. Do people need like clothes, blankets, stuff like that?
The thing that the elders need mostly are cotton underwear and those heavy diabetes socks, the cushioned socks. There's a lot of diabetics. I don't know for the kids so much about the clothes, but new pillows. Blankets are always welcome. But the kids, just toys and things like that for the kids. And
if there's anybody that can get, if there's anybody that's got a connection with a medical supplier or something and they want to help out, is there a need for more than just socks or anything like that? Do you guys need anything else medical wise for everybody, especially for the older people?
I think I don't think so. I think their needs are more weatherization, firewood, things like that. Their medical needs are pretty much met. But the kid, especially, it's really hard for the teenagers, to get gifts for, say, the 12-year-old to 18-year-old kids. Parent, they've got different needs than the little kids. Barbies don't work for them anymore. So it's those kinds of, maybe a Walmart card. I don't shop at Walmart, but I know a lot of those families do shop at Walmart, or those Visa gift cards, things like that they can just take and get what they need for their families, maybe. I don't know.
I know a lot of people don't like gift cards. People always, say to me, as long as, research the ones that, won't expire or people won't get screwed on. They are out there, but sometimes it's better to get someone a gift card if you can't give them cash, to give them the gift card, because then they can go out and purchase whatever they need, because nothing sucks worse than somebody giving you a gift and you have absolutely no use for it. It's not practical. So
I tell you what, the best gift I ever get is Hobby Lobby gift cards. I love gift cards. Not Kmart, but Hobby Lobby. But Kmart, that's a place where they can go. They can get rides to Walmart, because a lot of people go back and forth there to get groceries and to get clothes. And they can get toys, electronics. They can get everything there. And maybe movies, or, little personal CD players for the teenagers, or, things like that. And for the babies, different sized diapers, and maybe some baby toys, or, little onesies, or things like that, for the moms that are having new babies. And, because babies don't care if they're getting diapers or a onesie. They don't care.
Very true. Gwen, go ahead and give out the address one more time, because we got less than a minute. So go ahead and shoot out that address, the P.O. Box, where people can mail if they pick up anything that like you just listed, and they want to mail it to you. What's the address again?
It's Post Office Box 224, Black Hawk. That's 2 words, Black Hawk, South Dakota, SD 57718.
Thank you so much for everything you do, Gwen, and thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun, Popeye. We'll have to do it more often.
Yes, ma'am, we will. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said all night, make sure you tune into Gwen's broadcast, noon to 1 p.m. every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time, Morning Brew. And as always, I'll be back again Friday. Don't forget, Vince Palomera, the Secret Service expert from The Men Who Killed Kennedy, Part 7, will be on 2 hours. See you then. We're out of here.
Night, Popeye.